In the last video we made ourselves this little Zetor 25 and I talked about making a diorama for it, and since I've never done that before, how about we do it today? I cut myself out a little piece of styrofoam and I think we can just start. Now, the planning came first, as I didn't really know what I wanted to do just yet. So I started working on the tree. I cut myself out few stripes of wire, then I twisted them together, and then in the end I split it apart to make branches. I wasn't super happy with the amount of them, and you will see this will become a problem later, so I added one more, but that really didn't help. Then I continued on the tree. I made the bark texture using a Tamiya putty. This is essentially used to hide those wires and give it some texture, also make it more unified. And as you can see, I'm leaving out a lot of stuff and making quite a few mistakes. This will continue over the entire video, basically. I try to blend the tree into the ground as well with the putty, but that also didn't really work and it was useless at the end since I had to make a new tree. Then mistakes continued. I started cutting out the road. I used my scalpel, which wasn't a good idea. I should have used a bigger knife because this, even though it did cut pretty well, the cuts were too small and it was hard to form a proper shape for the road, but you know, we learn from our mistakes, and I've made a lot of them on this one, so I have a lot of stuff to learn. After the road was done, I went on to paint the tree. I used Vallejo Earth Brown, I think it was, and I painted the entire tree with it. The trunk and the branches, and the bottom was left in its original color because it was going to be in the ground anyway. This started giving the tree a shape, but as you can see it looked more like an elderly palm than an oak tree in Slovakia. Then I started working on the ground. For the middle part I used Vallejo weathering effects, fig mud acrylic. I had that in my stash because it's meant to be used for mud covered vehicles and stuff, you know, but I thought, why not use it on the ground? And the answer is, I have no idea, because it did end up looking really good. It dried up into a nice looking muddy ground with really interesting textures, and I didn't even need to repaint it because it had a great color already. Then for the sides where grass will be, I used Vallejo Environment acrylic. This one has little strands of dried grass inside of it, so I thought it would be a good idea to use underneath the grass. I don't know why I did that, because it's basically not visible on the finished product, but it does have a different color than the middle, and that also counts because we want some variety and we wanna see the difference between the two, so it did end up being a decent idea, I suppose. I took care to cover basically everything, so no blue styrofoam peaks from underneath the ground. There were still some spots where it did, but I just covered them up with grass. Then mistakes continued and continued. I started working on the tree. Now the tree was a complete disaster. There was not enough branches, and I realized I didn't have proper flocking for the tree. I only had dried real leaves that I grounded up, and then I had static grass. All leaf parts were terrible. They were too big. I didn't ground them up properly. The small amount of branches made it look like a weird palm or a dead tree in some Sahara desert. It really wasn't going well. Then I tried applying the grass onto it. It created this weird monster. It was just a complete disaster, so I just watched Luke Towan's tutorial on how to make trees, and I tried to do it one more time. The result was a bit better, but still I don't have proper flocking for this, so it still looks like a really weird palm, which is wrong because this is Eastern Europe. We don't have any of those. After the ground dried, I dry fitted the tree in. I made some beginnings of a fence, and I made a telephone pole that I also just threw out because it didn't look good. You can see the difference between the two trees. The new one looks a lot better, even though it's still not perfect by any means, like at all. Then I worked on the fence. I got some toothpicks that I cut into length, and then I started gluing them onto the poles that I installed before. Then another disaster happened. The PVA glue didn't really want to hold them in place. They kept falling down and stuff, so I just decided to make them look old and destroyed, like the fence is 60 years old. But I forgot to give the wood itself any weathering or anything, so it still looks weirdly new. I'm gonna have to not forget about all these mistakes next time I'm building a model, because yeah, I mean, it looks decent, but I could have done better. After that was installed, I started applying the grass. First I put on some PVA glue on the ground, and then I smashed it around with a damped brush. So, you know, it creates this ground of glue for the static grass to stack onto. I don't have any static grass applicators, but that was okay. I just put my little diorama into a box and then I just sprinkled the grass onto the diorama. And this was the first part that made me realize something really interesting. The diorama was finally coming together. I was feeling quite proud of myself because, after all, I've never done this before, and I was really liking the results so far. It was grassy, it had mud, it had everything I wanted, and I have painted some paintings before as well for my mother on her birthday, and I've always watched Bob Ross's videos while doing so. And Bob Ross always talked about giving your trees some names and creating a story for your painting, creating something unique and interesting. And this really stuck with me because building this diorama I realized I was doing something really similar. I was doing what Bob Ross was doing. In 3D I was creating this little story of a tractor going through some mud. Every rust particle, every dent on the tractor or a bullet hole on a tank when you're building a diorama, it gives the vehicle, your creation, its story. It gives it its characteristics. It gives it its just personality. This entire model building thing, after 4 years, once I've tried this diorama, I realized it's not really about putting pieces of plastic together anymore. It's about creating a story, creating a little world, and I really want to do this more and more. And from those Bob Ross's videos I can say this is really a joy of modeling. I want to thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I hope you liked the diorama. If you did, please subscribe and like my videos, even share them. I will try to release videos every Thursday from now on. We have another Eastern European diorama coming, and I would love you to see it, you know. So, thanks. I'm really happy you were here.